Mike, how are you? It's good to see you. Hi, Martha.
Hi.
Well, I'm recuperating, having done the big arbitration. I'm glad to see you guys.
Hey, Mark.
Hi.
You look nice and cozy.
Hey, Mark.
Been cold.
You're cold? Really?
Cold on the farm.
Oh.
I think it's, well, if the weather outside is cool and the air conditioning's blowing, it gets colder.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you, George.
Is Ted coming?
He should.
Okay.
Oh, I see. We got a few people here. Yeah. Ron, Anthony. Wow. Good. Hey, Ron. How's Moka Okeavi?
Do we have, I think we have Ron Barra. I don't see Ted.
I think I see Ron. Are you there, Ron? Ron Fujiyoshi and Ron Ibarra. There. I see Kahu. Steve. Hi, Steve.
I think Ron was the phone number.
Okay.
Is that correct, Christian? The 965.
Ronnie Barr, are you on?
Ted's here.
Ted's here, yeah.
Hi.
Hi. We're looking for Ronnie Barr.
Yeah, hold on.
Hello, Kahu, Steve.
A few more minutes, ladies and gentlemen, please. Thank you. He's in the waiting room, George.
Hi, Tommy.
Hello.
Hey, Tommy.
Hi, how's it going?
You hanging in there, Tommy?
Yep, I am. As you can see, I'm getting a little bit lighter up here. Comes with the job, but it's all good.
I mean, no. One more minute. Yeah.
Ron's telephone is hooked up. Ron, are you here? I see his telephone number.
I'm texting him right now. He says he's in the waiting room.
Oh, okay, because I see his telephone number now on the list.
Is it? Okay. Okay, thanks, George. Aloha, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being part of today's April 4th, 2023 special meeting of the Hawaii Correctional System Oversight Commission. as we discuss our previous facility tour of the Kauai Community Correctional Center.
Tommy, I don't see anybody from KCCC. Do you know if anybody from there knows that we're meeting today?
I don't know if they do or not. We've been busy with the legislature. In fact, I just came out of a meeting. Mick is still hung up in a meeting now. So it'll just be me. Once you guys start, I can go over some of the stuff. Because I did meet with Mick and Jerry Jonah, the warden, about the 5 recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Just answer here. If you're here, Mike Town.
Here.
Ronald Ibarra. Ronald, check your phone mute. Ted Sakai.
Here.
Martha Tornay.
Here.
Okay. Mark Patterson. I just believe we're having communication problems with Ronald, but I'm going to assume that he's on right now with some technical difficulties.
Oh, now he suddenly went off, I think.
Okay. We'll begin with the 5 of us here until we can confirm that Ronald's on board. George, keep me apprised of that. Right now, I'd like to open up an item 3. If anyone have any public testimony on what we're about to talk about in terms of Kulani Community Correctional Center.
No, Kauai Community Correctional Center, not Kulani, Kauai.
Kauai Community Correctional Center. Check my Hawaiian. Sorry. And it'll be interesting since we never talked about it. I don't know who would have public testimony on it. So let's go ahead and move on to number 4, the commission report on the KCCC observations. If it'd be the wheel of the committee and how you would like to proceed. If I'm to begin, kind of want to just throw out some a word and then just probably comment on it, on our observations of what we saw. Myself, Mike Town, Ronald Ibarra, and Martha was part of the team that went into Kauai Community Correctional Center.
And Kristen and George.
Kristen and George as well. So
I'm here now, Mark.
Oh, good.
No, Ronald. Okay, thank you, Ronald. Just for the record, I want to make sure we have a verbal contact with you. And so, as this is only the second time we've had this type of meeting, we're still trying to develop a structure to best describe how and what we saw in our observation of the facility. And so, if I was to just begin, Martha, maybe I'll start with you. Any comments on what in terms of regarding mental health?
You started with me about mental health?
Well, I'm just asking. I can start with mental health. When we talk about the mental health concerns that we're having in the correctional system that have been discussed at the level of the commission, really wanted to go in Kauai and in all the facilities that we're looking at, we're going to be looking at key things that have been discussed. And when we look at the mental health aspect, you're looking at environment, you're looking at programs, you're looking at the ability to manage mental health concerns, and how well is the facility equipped to deal with mental health.
Okay, Mark, no other. Oh,
Mark,
Ted,
this is Ted. If I can interject, before we go there, I wasn't on the tour. I was on the mainland that day. But I wonder if it would help the members of the public if we know, first of all, that the report is posted. There's a report posted on the website. I believe it's posted. And maybe a brief overview of what the commission saw as a group.
Yeah, Mark, I feel more comfortable starting that way too.
Okay,
the report is posted on the website, and I also put it in the chat so everybody can access it.
Well, I think the most striking thing that all of us noticed is the relationship between the staff and the inmates. It was clearly an open relationship. They could trust each other, it appeared. They talked a lot. They supported each other. And it's a different atmosphere, and it always has been for the years I worked with the department at KCCC. In that way, that there's really open dialogue between staff and inmates. We got some complaints, but not a whole lot of complaints. And we gave them the opportunity to speak to us individually, and some did. And we're considering those separate from this general discussion that we're having on the facility about they brought up particular things that affect them personally. It was crowded in some areas, and part of that was due to construction. And it's in our report that there were 2 construction projects going on. One was in the oldest part of the module, or the oldest part of the facility that was built in 1977. And 2 of the 4 very small modules there were under reconstruction, and it's gone on for more than 2 years. The frustration from the staff was very, very apparent. And it appears that change orders and things like that have led to that. Versus another construction project that is going on in Module C, which is an L-shaped wooden dormitory building, which is moving along very quickly. And as I recall, and Kristen, please tell me if this is correct, the group that is doing the Module A, the old facility, is from the mainland, and the other one is, and the one doing Module C is a local group. Am I remembering that correctly?
I'm going to double check the paperwork I have, but I think so.
Yeah, I think it was like that, but they were very frustrated. And what it resulted in is the other 2 living units in Module A, the 1977 building, were very crowded. We walked into one of these very small living units. There are only 3 cells, a bathroom, and a very small area outside the 3 cells. And not only was there a double bunk in the small area outside the 3 cells, there were mattresses to be unrolled onto the floor. And that was most unfortunate, that it was so crowded. But again, what struck us the most was the relationship between the staff and the inmates. It really seemed like the inmates felt they were getting the attention and were able to share with the staff what any problems they may have had, and they were being basically resolved. Kristen, do you have something to add to that?
No, I just want to know that you're correct. The company that was moving really slow, that the staff were feeling really frustrated with, they are a company out of Honolulu. And the other one, if I remember correctly, was out of Seattle, but I know it was the mainland. Yeah. For me, in addition to that, I mean, the staff were definitely awesome. Like, it was very apparent that they cared deeply about the inmate population, and they brought up, you know, various topics with us, and we're very open, which is always great to have. My initial impression is that, I know we'll talk about this further down, but there were a couple areas in the facility that didn't have a staff assigned to the post, or maybe there wasn't even a post. It was kind of unclear. But there are some areas where, like, people in custody consistent officer assigned to them. So I was really concerned about that. And then I also wanted to just make a note about the law library, because it is very, very tiny. It's also within a housing unit. And so
male housing unit.
A male housing unit. And I was really concerned that that was going to severely affect the access that people have. I did ask people in almost every housing unit if they're able to go to the law library, if they want to, if they've ever had any delays or issues with that. And everybody did confirm that if they sign up for it, the facility makes it happen. So I was really, really happy to hear that, because it's a tough, I mean, that's really, it makes it extremely difficult for staff, you know, even as far as escorting people to that space, right? Like, you have to have extra staff for that. So it was good to hear that staff are making it work. Nobody had complaints about that. Yeah, but I'll defer to other commissioners.
I have another comment I want to make. Even though the facility is in bad repair, and again, I want to remind people, these are not pointing at the current administration. These are long-term problems. These are old facilities. But at this facility, they were doing every effort to keep it as clean as possible, and that was very evident that they were trying to keep it clean. The thing that I was most concerned about is the women were crowded into a very small area and a cabin with no day room. That was my biggest concern.
Mike, any comments?
Sure. I was impressed. I was, as you all know, I was on the parole commission for 8 years, in and out of all the facilities, including Kauai. And I was struck that under, Act 179, we are supposed to push and should and do push restorative justice. We push therapeutic justice. I look personally to see if it can be horizontal justice, not just top down hard. And I look for transparency. And with this particular administration and this warden, I got the tone at the top is extremely positive, and the chief of security is extremely positive. And there seemed to be a good transition. I don't know if there's protocol on that, and Tommy can talk about that later if he wants, but I wanted to know, had there been an exit interview? What is the tradition if the old warden is even supposed to come aboard? In the military and with judges, we usually don't have the old chief judge come in. They're done. I call it the plaque and a whack. You thank them and off they go. So I was struck that it was horizontal, it was restorative, and it was very collegial, really good tone. And these are folks that I work with. So, but I kind of stayed out of that, and it was really good to talk to them. The kitchen was a problem, and because every army travels on its stomach, and I felt that the not security, that's the right word. If a kitchen is modern kitchen, you're going to have less workers' comp and less absenteeism, and you're going to have better morale, and hopefully the food tastes better. So I was overall very impressed. Tommy, do you do an exit interview when you shift wardens? I can't hear you. You're muted,
Tommy. My mic was muted, yeah. So we do attempt to talk to the wardens and before they leave. Unfortunately, some of them, when they retire, they decide not to. And that's their right. But since Max and I came on board, we tried to be more open and try to talk to senior staff and even people who submit their resignations to see, what are we doing right? What can we do better? I just recently sent out a survey to the staff for questions on things like how can we improve the department, what's good about the department, what's bad, what are the challenges. I've got some eye-opening comments back to the tune of about 600 pages from different facilities. Some are sour grapes, but some really do have some ideas we need to talk to the staff about. And both Max and I have an open door policy, and I continue that. And so the staff can communicate directly with me, but I will make sure that they're utilizing the chain of command, because I don't want to subvert the supervisory chain of command, but I do want them to know that they can talk to me about issues of concern. One of the things I did get, just so the commission knows, is that the employees, by and large, felt unappreciated to some degree, and they felt that their concerns weren't being heard under a previous administration before Max and I came on board, and that they were afraid of retaliation if they came forward. So I recently sent out an email about a month and a half ago to the staff, letting them know that I would not tolerate retaliation or any type of workplace violence of any kind. And that was actually a pretty good thing for the staff, because then certain people started coming forward with issues. And so we got our hands full with trying to run down those complaints and issues of concern, but we will run them all down, I can assure you that. So I think some of the staff are seeing the shift, if you will. We still got a long way to go, but I think we're on the right path. And the change from PSD to the DCR, Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, the spinoff of all law enforcement entities to the Department of Law Enforcement, I think that'll help with a paradigm shift. So we're on the right track. We just need funding and facilities.
Just to clarify what Mike was saying about transition from one warden to another, for those of you who don't know, the Neil Wakatsuma is the previous warden. He was there, I guess, Ted, for about 25 years he was warden. And he comes every Thursday and he holds like a group session every Thursday. So I think that's what Mike was referring to in the transition.
Yeah, he does. Neil does come back. We allow him to come back. And that's his baby, his group. And he does a good job. I'm glad he retired because he's been around for a long time and he needs to rest some because he was at the facility for 12, 14, 16 hours a day, almost 7 days a week.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tommy. Ron, you have any comments?
Yeah, most of it has been said, but the most glaring thing that caught my eye when I got there was due to the age of the facilities. You know, the walls needed painting, the tiles were cracked in the kitchen. And I was wondering, I don't know what kind of maintenance program they have, whether they're using the inmates to do those, I guess, the minor maintenance and versus having to contract it out if that's a union issue. But the biggest thing that caught my eye was already mentioned is basically the interaction between the staff and the inmates. You know, basically, I saw, I don't think if you can have the best facilities, if you don't have the kind of attitude that they've had, you're not going to have a successful transition into the rehab program because at least they were treated, I think, like human beings. I also asked, and I was hearing Kristen and others ask questions. I won't cover into their areas where they ask, but for me, because of pretrial overcrowding, you know, when I asked the inmates how many of them were there with less than $100 bails imposed, none. There are none, which tells me something. Which basically tells me that, you know, hopefully the court is seeing that if you're going to impose a low bail, just release them. That's why I hope it's happening. The other question I asked was basically how many of them are incarcerated without going to trial for more than 6 months, and surprisingly, none. You know, I asked 6 months the cutoff because under Rule 48, the Hawaii Rules of Penal Procedure, it's 6 months from the date of your arrest. And of course, there's a constitutional speedy trial right issue. So, you know, I was pleased about that. But most importantly, you know, it's the relationship between the staff and the inmates. The other thing that a staff told me, and I won't mention the name, he or she, who's been there for more than 10 years, that the only big construction work that they've seen in the past 10 years is the Sally Port and the dorms. Other than that, there's no major CIP construction that contributed to the improvement of the correctional facilities. But certainly, that's why I say it basically comes down to the facilities being aged, in need of repair, and like Tommy said, need of funding. And I wonder, now we have a new administration, because as we probably heard when we visited the other sites, is basically each site submits a wish list and it's then determined elsewhere. And I don't know how the determination is made, whether the squeaky wheels get the grease or there's a visit from top down to verify the priorities. But overall, you know, Kauai is pretty, for me, with what they have, it stands out the interaction between the inmates and the staff, and to me that, like Mike says, shows the type of leadership they have there.
Thank you, Ron. Was that everyone? Okay. For me, when you look at Kauai, probably the last time I was at the Kauai facility, it was probably in the mid-90s. So a lot of it have been added. But when you're looking at correctional structures, Kauai is at the point where, because of the age of its structure, and as mission increases or population increases, everything that you see is in addition to the original structure. Yeah. And so if you look at OCCC, a lot of what is OCCC now is not what it looked like when they originally designed it. Yeah. So you make changes as the need and population changes et cetera, et cetera. So there are a lot of age issues with the structural environment, as you've heard from the other commissioners. But it was good to see that either it was being fixed at the time of our tour, or there was plans to fix it. Yeah. So that's basically operational upkeep. With that being said, you're looking at a security force of probably 8 or 9 on a working day shift, managing 100 plus offenders on Kauai, and understanding that Kauai's population is probably around 60,000. You can understand the uniqueness of the security force and their relationship to the population that they're serving at this particular point in time. I thought it was amazing that we, in every section of the facilities, from modules A to C and to the external cottages that we walked through, everybody knew what part of the program they were in and could articulate their goals and what they needed to get to the next step. Yeah. Not only did I find that amazing, I also found it amazing that the officers could articulate the programs in the housing units that they were in. Yeah. So they specifically understood what their role was with the particular population that they were assigned to do. Yeah. So there was that flow. So we saw from pre-trial, and we also spoke with a group of offenders that had just recently returned from Arizona, and that were working on their work furlough options. And they had their own cottage, and it was interesting to have that conversation with what their expectations and how they're being helped at that particular time. So this is in overall to have your workforce and your population on the same page in regards to programs is unique, something I've never really seen. Of course, most of my experience are in 1,000-bed facilities, but in the uniqueness is what is Kauai. Even though they have structural issues, they are moving forward in their programmatic goals and missions for their population. In terms of when we talked about OCCC and their medical and their mental health, we would say that a lot of the structural needs was not adequately enough for the population. And there have been complaints about it. When you look at Kauai and the fact that their spacing is very limited in regards to mental health programming and medical programming, there wasn't or very few complaints about medical or mental health program. So it's very interesting, Tommy, the uniqueness of Kauai and how we can capitalize on what's going on there and learn from them. Every island is going to be different because of the uniqueness of the island culture. But Kauai is an example that, in my experiences in public safety, I've never seen such a cohesion of understanding of the purpose for the facility and its goals for public safety on the island of Kauai. Yeah.
I want to mention also that this is not new for Kauai. Under different administrations, starting with John Smythe, who was the one who, as I recall, opened up Kauai Community Correctional Center. It has always been very open in the communication between staff and inmates.
So real big kudos to the warden. Jonah, is this his name? John?
Jerry Jonah.
Jerry Jonah. Is he permanent or is he acting?
No, he's permanent warden. He was the CS1 there for a long time under Neil. So he learned a lot from Neil before Neil retired.
Yeah. And just kudos to him and his staff for what they're doing. And I was very impressed with Lieutenant Victorino, who's the acting chief of security. Mm-hmm. His knowledge of programmatic journeys and the mission of the facility was pretty impressive for a correctional officer that have been in the system as long as he has. And the fact that he understands his limitations in terms of what his security has and doesn't has, but is still program oriented and very strong in assuring that their program goals are met. So that's
I understand there's another project they're going to be working on, the kitchen and the mess hall. The mess hall was used by the Module C and by the cabins. It's not in good shape. It's clean, but it's not in good shape. But my understanding, and Kristen, please correct me if I'm wrong, is there is a project already in the works to replace the kitchen. And once they replace the kitchen, it's going to be a modular one, so it'll be easy to put together. Won't take years to build. And then they'll be taking down the old one and rebuilding a new mess hall. Is that correct, Kristen?
The only thing that wasn't clear to me about that is the timeline for that.
Yes, the timeline.
I just wasn't sure, and maybe Tommy, I'm not sure if you know, but they did mention that like there's a plan for it. It just wasn't clear when that might take place.
I don't have that is correct, but I don't have the CIP list in front of me. Had I known that we were talking CIP, I would have had the list in front of it. There are plans to build what I call a bridge kitchen, temporary kitchen, so we can continue operations. And so we can then rebuild the new kitchen, more modern, more efficient, and then take down the portable kitchen. That's the plan.
Tommy, do you know if it's already something that's in the works? You've already given the contract out?
We haven't given the contract out as part of our CIP project.
Okay.
Last year, the legislature cut our CIP budget across the board by 90%. Part of the money was for that. And of course, they didn't give it back to us this year.
Just one last remark before we can move on to, discussing those recommendations, Tommy, because we did find some concerns in our trip to OCCC about how the facilities were managing those COVID containers. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then you recall we did not see someone posted at the time whether or not they were there. We weren't sure, but we didn't see anyone there. But same thing for Kauai. Yeah. Really not understanding what their role was in providing the coverage. And if there was someone coveraging, they were taking them off another post to move bodies in and out or to do actual checks on them. Yeah. Yeah.
But for those containers, so we're clear, the day you guys were there was no one in the containers. And so no one is in the containers. And there were
people in the containers.
But
themselves were occupied. A couple of women had been there 3 days, I think, already. No, they just arrived, but there was also another male in it, so they were occupied.
Okay, if they were, then that's my mistake. When I was talking to Jerry, he seemed to indicate that
I'm here. I can let me respond to that.
Oh, Jerry's there.
Let me respond.
Welcome, Jerry.
Hello.
Hi, Jerry.
How you doing, Kristen? Hello, folks. John, how you doing?
Good.
Yeah, so my mistake on that. We did have people in there, but it wasn't for what was that for? We didn't have anybody utilizing it for COVID. We didn't have nobody here. It wasn't for COVID purposes. I thought
the two women, Jerry, I thought the two women, they were newly admitted, and they mentioned that they were there just for the 5-day period of time to determine.
Oh yeah, they were utilizing that for the routine observation. Sorry.
Yes, but nobody had COVID at the facility the day.
Nobody had COVID.
Yeah.
So nobody had COVID. I want to make it clear: if one person is in the modular container units, there needs to be a post set up. And the person has to have the keys to open and close in case there's an emergency, the containers, and also have a radio. So regardless of the reason that they are in there, whether it's just for the 5-day quarantine or what have you, then we still have to have somebody posted for sure.
Mark, I got one more thing.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I'm glad Jerry's here, and we had a really good talk, and Tommy knows this too. Having a code of civility of some sort from the staff, from the tone at the top, and Jerry represents to me a really good example of a good coach, a positive coach, and also a good warden. But in my view, anybody that comes in as staff should not be allowed to cuss or swear. And I know that may be impossible in a facility because the culture has been, you can do that. And so I just think there has to be, I want to understand if civility is happening. With judges, we have a code that says patience, dignity is important. So, and civility. So I just want to make sure I understand that. Tommy, if folks come in to teach and do stuff, are they allowed to cuss and hoot and howl and swear?
No, of course not.
Well, how do they know that?
I'm sorry? How do they know
How are
that?
they told that?
Well, it's common sense. You don't use profanity when you're speaking to someone. It's certainly counterproductive if you're teaching a class and using profanity.
Well, I agree it's common sense, but common sense is usually the first thing to go when people get all excited. So, but I want to apply that, that be applied, because I just can't tell you the times when I've coached, and these folks are locked in there, and they should not be subjected to that. And I don't know that that's happening, but I'm just raising that.
Right,
I do want to say, Tommy, while we were there, we saw no indication at the time that we were there that anybody was doing that at the time we were there.
Right. Thank you.
If you want to have any remarks on what you just heard before we move on.
Can I make another comment about the COVID area or the container? The only thing, the shower area was built across from the container, and the hallway that you go from the cell to the shower area was visible from other areas, from the module C and the visiting area and stuff like that. So there is netting that's put up, but you could still see figures going by. You would probably be able to identify the individual, but I just wanted to, that's of some concern that people could be viewed from another area as they're going to and from the shower.
Thank you.
I don't think you could identify them.
Right. But Jerry can take a look and see if we can get some thicker material.
Yeah.
It may not be that big a problem, but I just noticed it.
All right. Thank you.
Ed?
No, I have no comments. Well, let me just say that based on the descriptions that I've read and heard today, except for the COVID containers, everything seems to be pretty much the facility that I was familiar with. I visited Kauai. I used to visit all the facilities all the time, so I was very familiar with them. I remember when the cottages were brought in after Hurricane Iniki. I'm very happy to hear that Jerry has continued the programming, the type of programming that had been started by Neil, had been ongoing. It's really, I used to joke that that the program was a security and that Neil was the program. And so if Neil left it, we might not only lose a program, but also the security. So it's really gratifying for me to hear that Jerry has picked up and the program culture has been sustained. I think it's great.
Thank you, Ted. Christian, we want to move forward at this time to talk about those recommendations.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I also just wanted to put in one side note too. In the containers for the 5-day quarantine, there was nobody in there over the 5 days. And in addition to that, the facility had actually taken like a large water cooler with ice and everything and kept it in the containers so that individuals had access to that at all times. And I think that's just like another small indication of the humanity that KCCC really shows. So it was good to see.
And also the cells in the container were much larger than the ones at OCCC. It could easily fit 2 bunks with a lot of open area in between.
So you Tommy, you want to start with the recommendations?
Oh, wait a minute. There's something I want to talk about the women in the cabins. The cabins were brought over or returned to the facility after Hurricane Iniki. And so that's more than 30 years ago. They've been there. They really were temporary. And Ted, if you recall, in our space analysis that we did in 2001, we did not include the cabins in the space, in designated space, because it did not have a fire suppression unit or 2 exits from it. And I believe that is still the situation today. The male cabins were set up so they're L-shaped. They're facing each other in an L shape, and they have open lanais, which appears to be the day room area for the cabins, where the women's cabin The lanai has been covered to allow for more, enclosed into the cabin to allow for more bunks. There is no day room space at all in the women's cabin. They were very, very crowded. We were also informed, like in Module A, which is part of the original facility, I asked the inmates about what kind of activities they had, and they said they are kept busy. They do not have a lot of idle time. The women have a lot of idle time. One example they used is one of the program people that comes in. She does multiple programs with them, but if she doesn't show up, then there's nothing. And I was really concerned they didn't have a day room area, a way to get some fresh air and not be in view of males. That was one thing that was also apparent. If they went out to the pavilion that is used for part of the programming, it is in front of the male cabin, so the males would be able to observe them. So I'd like to see that resolved, Jerry, if you possibly can get some day room space for the women.
Yeah, we took your recommendations, and we had a meeting last Friday, this past Friday, and we're looking into creating a balcony space for the women.
Okay, thank you.
So kind of drafting up a plan there. So, I mean, you see the cabins A and B, they have that lanai space.
Yes.
So the males can.
And we saw men out there, like a couple were playing cards and things like that. It's day room space.
Yeah. So we're trying to do the same for the women. So we kind of have a design on how we want to create that space for them. So we're working on that. So thank you for the recommendation. And
Jerry, I just want to ask, have you been at this meeting from the beginning of the meeting?
No, actually, we had a security meeting that I was in. So I was at a security meeting.
The reason I'm asking is because we had a lot of very complimentary things to say about the relationship between your staff and the inmates and how you are running the facility. So I just wanted to let you know we were very impressed. And another thing that we were impressed with is how clean the facility is, regardless of the age, because it's very old. But you folks work very hard to keep it as clean as you can. And we appreciate that, too.
Oh, we appreciate that. Thank you guys so much. But now let's get to the nitty gritty here and go ahead. Don't hold back.
Ready.
I told Kristen that before she left. Don't hold back.
You did.
So when we look at the report that we submitted that's on our website, everyone, they came with it at the very ending of it, recommendations, specifically 5 recommendations. And I'll ask Christian or Tommy, how do you want to do with that? You want to go ahead and let Tommy answer them?
I mean, I can go one by one, and if Tommy or if the warden have anything to add. I mean, some of these I think we've covered within the conversation, but if it's helpful, I can go one by one.
Okay.
Okay. So the first recommendation, we already kind of talked about this, but the container units outside of Module 5 that are used for COVID isolation, at the time, there was not an officer at that post. And so the individuals who had to open the doors for us so we could talk to the individuals within actually came from the front gate. So just really making sure that somebody is always posted if there's anybody in there. Obviously, that's a huge liability for the department if not. But I know, Tommy, you had mentioned that had already been dealt with, right?
Yes.
Perfect. So the second recommendation is very similar. When we had first walked in,
can I add to that, Kristen?
Yeah,
Kristen, can I just add to that? So when we met on Friday, we're thinking of placing. We are looking to maybe put an ACO post there. We do have a front office post that we closed. Probably reopening that post and placing just like that front office building that you see where the ACO sits, that allows traffic to come through. Putting a similar sized building right next to that container and posting an ACO right in that right next to that container. So that's the idea. We were taking these recommendations to heart. So that was kind of the idea that we had, and I think people agreed to it. So we're looking into that.
Okay, great. Yeah, and And we'll follow up with you too, after the meeting. And that way, like if you have anything that you've already kind of addressed, if you can share that, that's perfect. So thank you.
Before we move on, can I ask Tommy, was there an end date for the use of these containers that were purchased for COVID purposes? Just
no,
curious.
because we're waiting for guidelines from the CDC that won't come out until May. And so once they update the guidelines, then we can decide how to proceed. But we will still keep the containers for some type of housing as needed. But we will need to just make sure we have somebody posted there when we do have at least one person out there, because most of our facilities are severely overcrowded. So in the case of KCCC, they're not as bad off. They are at 110 design capacity. Operation capacity is 128. They're at 116, which is not too bad. But it is our intent to continue to use them for housing purposes as needed, but we'll have to come up with a policy for that. I don't think, to be honest with you, that this will be our only pandemic. I think more stuff will come our way eventually, and this will help us deal with that. And then I would like to discuss, when we get done with this here, discuss our plans for OCCC and women's, even though it's not on the agenda, because I think I need to clarify a couple of points here. And I think the plan we have, I think you guys will like what we plan to do, particularly for the infirmary for OCCC. So we'll go back to
Tommy, we have to stick to our agenda. If we're going to be talking about other facilities, I think that we would have to notify the public we're going to talk about other facilities.
All right. So can I request you guys include it as an agenda item on the next regular meeting?
Yes.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Yeah.
And Tommy, I just want to make something clear. Even though the capacity is 128, currently you have one dorm in Module C that is not occupied, and 2 of the living units in Module A. Right. So you don't have that capacity right now.
I know, but we're trying to, that's what the CIP construction projects are for. The repair
people working on Module C, everybody is very pleased with their progress. It's the Module A that is frustrating the facility very, very much. That's it.
Okay.
Mark, you're on mute, just so you know.
We can move to number 2, Kristen.
Okay, perfect. So the second recommendation, very similar to the first. There was, it's a little hard to explain. There's a hallway in the administration building, and on the left side of that hallway, there are a few different cells. When we had toured during that time, there was not an officer in the vicinity. I did ask the officer who was touring with us if there was a post there. I got kind of a mixed answer. I think there's supposed to be, but there's no desk. I'm not sure. But either way, there was not an officer in that vicinity. That space is typically used for suicide watch. I think those were just some new admissions, or maybe some individuals who they wanted to keep a closer eye on potentially. But either way, there wasn't an officer. So same type of thing. Like if you're going to house people in those spaces, there absolutely has to be an officer in the vicinity of that post. And
regardless of whether it's suicide watch or holding or disciplinary SAG, it has to be an officer. Yeah.
Right. And Warden, would you be able to clarify, is there an actual post that exists in that space?
Yes, it's the intake officer. So as you guys came to that main door, right to the right of that
office,
that's where he sits. He sits in there. So he may have been out on break or something when you walk through there.
Yeah, maybe they stepped out. Yeah, but I just wanted to, because that was what we saw, I just wanted to make sure that was in there, and that way it can be addressed. The third recommendation, this is in relation to those COVID-19 cells we've been talking about. This is a challenge, right? There's really specific PREA regulations that talk about how women have to be separated by sight and sound. And so part of keeping the sights away and keeping individuals who are in those COVID containers from yelling at or speaking to individuals who might be able to hear them in other cells, the facility had placed like a magnetized slab over the window. And the point is that if you roll it up, it's supposed to stick so they can keep it, they can open and close as needed if there's somebody walking through. They were all completely closed when we toured. And when an officer tried to roll it up and put it up, it would not stay. So it was kind of clear to me that it had probably been closed like that for a while. So I was pretty concerned about that. I mean, it makes those cells completely pitch dark. There's not another window or access to light in any other way. So we, the commission had recommended potentially replacing those windows with like frosted windows. So you still allow natural light, but it takes away the concern of people being able to see each other.
Now, there is an electrical light inside the cell. We're talking about natural light. And so the only natural light that would be available is through that door window. And the window itself is already very, very small.
Okay. But so we're clear, we're not going to put frosted glass on the windows because then we can't see inside at all. And so we have to be able to see inside. So I agree, maybe, Jonah, take a look and see if we can do some other type of covering for the window where it's easier to move or easier to open up when we need it. But if we put frosted glass on the windows, that means we can't see inside to see if the inmate's in distress. Right?
No, that's a valid point. Thank you, Tommy. That's a really good point. And I completely agree with that, actually.
So, Jerry, it's just making sure those flaps can, in fact, be opened and secured open, and that people keep them open unless there's a need to close them. That
is correct.
The default should be keep them open.
That's how it should be.
Okay, thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
The fourth recommendation, which Martha and the warden had kind of talked about previously, but to build a covered area or pavilion or something like that outside of Cabin C, which is where our incarcerated women are, in order for them to have an outdoor space and a day room area. So Warden, I know you mentioned that you guys were working on that, and we are very, very appreciative. And I know the women will be too. That was a tight space. Any other comments?
Just so you guys know, just so you guys know that the women do have a lot of, out of cabin time, right? So maybe that day it wasn't, but they're usually in the garden in the morning. They're there for a few hours, and then they're usually out to classes. I think the thing that maybe that we're deficient at is just that lanai space, maybe the balcony space, but they do get out a lot.
I will say when we spoke to the women, that wasn't the impression that I had received. My impression is that they're in there pretty frequently. But again, any additional outdoor space is greatly appreciated.
Or day room space, of any sort. Because otherwise they're all sitting on their bunks. They don't have chairs really available to sit. They're all sitting on their bunks.
Yeah.
So we appreciate you considering building a place for them to go outside and have a day room.
Yes. The last recommendation, this came up actually talking to the women in Cabin C. And so the last recommendation is to consider hosting a monthly family day specific for those who have 2 or more children. So what we had learned was that visits are limited to 1 child per visitor. And so for individuals who have multiple children, makes it really, really hard for them to see them. And so we had heard from some individuals who have 3 children, for example, and it gets to the point where the kids don't even want to come because it's once every 3 weeks. And it's just disheartening as far as considering the family unit. And so in keeping with the commission's goal to help the department transition to a rehabilitative and therapeutic system, Martha and I thought that this could be a decent recommendation to consider, to have maybe once a month or however the facility would be able to make it work with their staffing constraints, but to allow, all of the children to come and visit their incarcerated loved ones at the same time.
And Kristen did put into the report, there is currently a bill in the legislature, House Bill 451, related to establishing a family resource center. I think this is the one, Tommy, where you didn't get to expend the money in time. You're asking to extend the money into another year.
Right, because the money wasn't released under Governor Ige until very late in his term, and so we had to. And DHS is doing the same thing. They have to go in and ask. We're a little bit further along in drawing down our money than they are, but just know that for Kauai, because the facility is so small, I don't know if it's feasible for us to do this once a month because of our staffing there, and because we'd have multiple visitors coming with multiple children, more than one, and so we can work with Jerry to see what we can do. We might have to do it on kind of a rotating basis kind of thing. Because at any given time, correct me, Jonna, you only have 7 to 9 people on duty, maybe 10 at the most. Jerry, sorry.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So it's a good idea, but our staffing would kind of prevent us from maybe doing it regularly. But we can reach out because Jerry's been there for a long time. He's got a good relationship with the community. So one, if we can get some volunteers, send them through Volunteer, they can provide assistance to us in that regard.
I was thinking
that'd be great.
Churches are often groups that are willing to come in and help with things to do with families.
Yeah, we have to get the Volunteer back up and running again, the training.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about this family day just for females, or are we talking about the entire population?
It should be population.
The entire population. This came up after talking to the female population specifically, but I think it's important for fathers too.
Yeah, so again, with our staffing challenges, we would have to look at rotating it by dorm, and depending on the amount of people in the dorm at any particular time. With children, we'd have to break that down maybe into two different event days, if you will.
Well, and custody too, right?
I mean, we got to take into custody issues too.
We hold all the jails and the felons. And
so either way, we can take a look at it and see what we can do. And whatever we can do, we will certainly try.
Yeah, and I think bringing up the volunteer piece is a huge factor as well, because I know that you guys are short on staff, and so it's not the intention to set you up for something that you can't do. It's more just, even if there's a way to think outside of the box in any way, I think that would be really impactful.
Yeah, I agree. I just have one last thing. I got to go, guys. I just have one last thing to say about Kauai. We did ask for $5 million to look at relocating the facility, but $3 million in fiscal year 2024 and $2 million in fiscal year 2025. Unfortunately, it didn't make it into the Senate version of the budget, the SD1, but they did put in a $100 placeholder for us, so which means they are still discussing it. And so maybe in the committee draft, we probably will get something. I will talk to the head of WAM, De La Cruz, on the Senate side, and Yamashita on the House side, that if they do give us funding, give it to us in the first year so we can start right away instead of waiting to the second year. But I'll let you guys know how that comes out in the end. Okay. So I have to leave now. Go ahead.
Is that something that the commission could be helpful with? Like, could the commission write a letter to WAM, anything in support? Well,
I think if the commission wants a letter to De La Cruz asking him to restore the funding that we requested, the $3 million in fiscal year 24 and $2 million in fiscal year 25, and then also to Chair Yamashita on the House side, if they could do the same, because eventually we do need to move the facility because it's in the flood zone now, and it's by the highway. So eventually we do need to move the facility. So that's what the money was for, the request was for, to find a site. So whatever the commission can do in that regard, I would appreciate it. I got to leave now, but because I'm running late, I'll leave you in Jerry's capable hands. If anything comes up that are deliverables, Jerry, just let me know. We can sit down and go over them, okay?
Thank you, Tommy.
Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Those are all of the recommendations, commissioners. So yeah.
Any final comments from the commissioners on what we just heard from Tommy and Warden of Kauai Community Correctional Center? I did want to make one last comment, and there's no need to be no response on this. but the chief of security did talk to us about the shortage of staff.
Yeah.
The fact that his officers working 24-hour shifts or 24-plus-hour shifts. It's a very small security force, but they are overworked and overtasked at this particular point in time. So we'll have that discussion at the next meeting with Tommy on strategies in terms of public safety, if they do have strategies in employment opportunities or recruitment aspects. We hear a lot about shortages. We don't hear about what the solutions are or what direction they're moving in. And of course, we know both statewide and nationally, there's a lot of vacancies, both privately and in state government as well. So just wanted to leave that as part of the discussion as well. So as we move on, if there's no further comment on the report or the observation.
Mark, I just want to move that we as commission adopt the report as the report of a Kauai Community Correctional Center visit.
I second that motion.
Say that one more time, Ronald. You kind of came broken up.
I move that the commission adopt the report as our report of Kauai Community Correctional Center visit.
And I second the motion.
Okay, it has been moved and seconded that the report of the Kauai Community Correctional Center March site tour as written be accepted as in record. For record.
Yes.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say same. Okay, motion passed. I think at this time, I'd like to...
And can I just bring up one more thing?
Yes.
Apple has put into the comments, are there union regulations on the number of hours they can work? I cannot imagine that long hours such as this do not lead to safety issues. It's not union regulations. In fact, it's federal regulations. But this happens in police and it happens in corrections all the time. I'm wondering, Jerry, can you tell me what percentage of your total force is filled, or what percentage vacancies do you have? Is it like 40%, 30%?
Hi, Martha. Thank you for that question. I'm actually sitting here with our chief. So I'll have our chief, Harry Victorino, answer that question for you.
Yeah, currently we have a total staffing security force of 61, including my position. And right now we have 13 vacancies that I'm aware of, but we're soon going to have 2 additional. So we'll be at about 25%. Now that's 25% vacancies. And then you also have the people that are calling in, which create a whole different situation in staffing.
How many of your staff are on workers' comp? If any.
Right now. We only have one outlet.
One, okay.
Running.
Yeah, not on work comp.
Nobody in rec.
Okay.
Rec comp. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Martha, for that question. Thank you, guys. With that being said, we'll move to item 5 on our agenda. I'll be taking any comments from the public on today's meeting, if there are any. I'll be looking for hands or digital hands at this time for anyone who may have make a comment. Or acknowledge me verbally. Okay. George, so you can back me up. I don't see any hands at this time. So next, in April 20th, we're... go ahead.
Mark, one more item. I move that the commission support the department's request for funds to start planning the move of the Kauai Community Correctional Center to another site. This has been talked about for 25 years now. And There are two things happening. Number one, it's not only in a flood zone, it's lower than the road than the highway, as you know, but it's also in the tsunami zone. And we actually evacuated the facility once back in the 90s because of tsunami warning. And the second is that for years now, the Department of Transportation has been talking about widening the highway in front of the facility. And if they do, given the amount needed for the highway widening itself and right of way, they would take 60 feet from along the frontage of the facility. So and I understand that the DOT is getting closer to finalizing its plan. So it really is imperative that they find something soon. So I move that the commission support this request.
I second the motion.
So
Mr. Sakai, thank you for that. Just want to let you guys know, since you've been here and you saw, that's 60 feet. So what it'll do, it'll take away cabins A, cabins B, and part of cabin C. So we did see the draft plan for that. So we will lose all those housing units.
So they actually have it on paper now, Jerry.
They have it on paper. So we got to see it.
Isn't that
so there goes cabin A, cabin B, and part of cabin C.
Isn't that all your parking too?
That's our parking as well.
And the pavilion.
Right. And the pavilion. That will be gone.
Okay, hold on. So it's been moved that we support PSD's efforts in relocating of Kauai efforts.
Well, I'd like to be specific about supporting their request for an appropriation. The one we talked about,
yes,
that it's in the executive budget, but was not included in the legislative budgets.
Yeah, I'm trying to word the motion, Ted.
And it should be worded that way to support their appropriation rather than us giving a dollar amount.
Yeah.
We're supporting their request.
So, Kristen, we're going to support. The motion has been to support the request. Sorry.
For an appropriation to relocate the Kauai Community Correctional Center.
Correctional Center. Seconded by Martha. Okay, any further discussion? Go ahead, Kristen.
I was just going to ask if the warden and Ted wouldn't mind reviewing what I write up. I just want to make sure that I can encompass some of this history, and then also like the 60-foot thing. I think that's really important to highlight to the ledge if the commission is okay with adding in those details.
I'm good, and I'd be glad to review.
Great. Thank you.
No further discussion. All in favor say aye.
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 All right. All opposed say same. Okay, that motion carried. Thank you, everyone, once again for that. That's a good one, Ted. Thank you. Before I close, I'll give an opportunity for Kauai Community Correctional Center. If you guys want to have any last comments before we leave today. Really appreciate the hospitality that you showed the commission when we arrived. And I'm hoping that this meeting today would be helpful in moving you folks along to your needs that you have been asking for the last several decades.
Yeah. One thing I just want, this is an aside, but to bring up, our next meeting is going to be on the 20th. And if I'm correct, that's going to be in Hilo, correct? And I'm wondering if we can skip having a special meeting on HCCC because Kristen has been paying very close attention to HCCC, and there's a lot written up that people can read in the reports. So any concerns we have about HCCC, I think we could discuss at a regular meeting in May, as opposed to having a special meeting to discuss HCCC. Just a suggestion. We don't have to decide right now.
Okay.
Could I ask, are we going to go into Halinani too?
Yeah.
So that's two separate facilities. Halenani is quite different. And then we go to Kulani on a different date.
Kulani's in July. Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you. I mean, I don't know what we're going to find. Kristen's been immersed in it, and I've been to HCCC many times, but I don't know what to expect there. So maybe we can defer that, or if you don't want a meeting, that's fine.
Cool. Okay, going back to Warden Jonah, you have any last words you'd like to share with us before we leave?
Well, I know the captain wants to send his alone as well, so I'm just going to say, we appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming over and looking in our needs and helping us address those needs. I mean, of course, we owe a lot of this to Neil, right? Who kind of changed the vision and the way you do corrections. And we're trying to kind of maintain what he was trying to do here, and what he actually did was what you talked about, but just the rehabilitative side of corrections. And that's what he tried to do here. And we're just driving the car now. I'm just here. I just took over the wheel, and I'm just trying to do what he did. But for you guys to come over and look at some of the deficiencies that we do have and helping us in addressing those things, we appreciate that. So I'll leave that with you guys. I send my aloha to you guys, but I will leave the captain with the last word here.
Yeah, basically, I just wanted to thank you for coming here and taking a look at our operation and how we're trying to use the resources that we have. Any assistance we could get to improve would be greatly appreciated. With regard to staffing, our staffing force is a total of 61, so that's not very many officers for a 24/7 operation. And although our positions vary from watch to watch, we try to keep a minimum of between 8 and staff working at the same time on each of the watches, even though they have different functions and different needs. That's where we try to keep our operational minimum. And the thing that's impacting us the most is not just the staff shortages, with recruitment being an issue and retention in some instances. And recently, we've had more people retiring following COVID, but we have other people that are going to also retire this year, causing our staffing to even fall shorter. But I think the greater concern, and it's not to step on anybody's rights, but it's things like the excessive leave that we're experiencing. We're already short, but when we have officers that won't come to work, it impacts the staff that are coming to work, and it creates a really difficult situation for everybody. But the one thing I did want to really get across to you guys is, even though we have limited resources, even though we have limited staffing, rehabilitation is second nature here, because it's something that's been infused in a lot of us from the beginning of our careers. And so I'm not sure, I wasn't here earlier on in a meeting, but KCCC really is a special place. And the people that work here want to see the lives around us improve, because it improves conditions for everyone. And so we're doing the best that we can. I take your points that we're addressing here seriously, and we're going to do what we can to improve the things we can improve. But I just hope you understand that we have some limitations, and most of it will come back to our staffing. But thank you again. If there's anything else or more that we can do, we're very well open to any suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Jerry, you're doing more than just driving the car. To see the way that the staff and the inmates work well together, you're sustaining something that's very important.
And you're better than a Tesla.
Yeah. The fact that you're on Kauai is probably a 4-wheel drive. So thank you guys.
We've got good staff, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Warden Jonah, Chief Victorino. Appreciate you folks. Our next meeting, tour, will be at Kauai Community Correctional Center on April 20th. So we're just making that announcement at this time.
Our next meeting, I believe, will be at the college in. We'll have the meeting. I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We'll have the meeting first, and then we'll tour the facility after on April 20th on the Big Island. And so we'll be announcing where the meeting will be located, and anybody from the Big Island, we urge you to come visit with us.
Yep.
I just put it in the chat. It's at University of Hawaii at Hilo.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. That's pretty much our agenda for tonight.
Mark, move we adjourn.
It's been moved that we adjourn. Seconded by Martha.
My second.
These afternoon meetings, I don't know. Sorry. We moved second that we adjourn the meeting at this time, and we'll see everybody back April 20th from the Big Island. All in favor, say aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you guys. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Kevin.
You take care.